Hello, and welcome to the channel. Today, we're going to be taking a look at my Friday the 13th, Part 4, Jason Voorhees costume. This is the second year in a row where I kind of make a post-Halloween costume video, and I hope you like it. Also, before we start this, I am kind of sick, so if my voice sounds off, that's why. Once again, I just have the costume laid out on my bed, so you can take a look at it overall before you look at the individual pieces. Anyways, let's get into it. Now, this costume is a lot less complicated than my Friday the 13th Part 6 costume, so we're just going to be starting with the clothes. Starting with the shirt, this is just another shirt I got from Goodwill for this. Now, this was a bit light when I got it. Like, if I look at the inside of it, you can see how much lighter that was than I wanted it. So I started by kind of spraying it down with black paint mixed with water in a spray bottle, which made it a bit darker but didn't do a whole lot. So I did what I did with last year's costume, and I ended up going over it with some black spray paint from about a foot away, just to really get it dark. And it didn't get covered very evenly, but I do think that kind of helps with the look Jason has in this movie, with just how much he's been running around in the rain and stuff. If you are going to go over and spray paint a shirt like this, make sure you do kind of get under the collar, which I missed, because when you do end up having like a hood and stuff, the collar does kind of get a bit wider, and it shows that. And also maybe go over kind of like this area, depending on how the shirt ends up fitting you. As you can see, I also ended up adding this blood here coming down from the collar where the axe wound would have been. Now, in the movie, the blood is usually kind of located here, but I liked the kind of image of it dripping down. Now, it is heavily diluted. I don't want it to show up too much on the shirt. I want it to be a bit more subtle, but, you know, still very much there. I did this by having just slightly watering down some dark red paint I had and going over here. I tried it very watered down before, and it just would not show up on the shirt. It would soak right through. So this is just pretty much just red paint mixed with black, and then just like a tiny amount of water to get this effect you see right here. And I think it turned out pretty good. I like how it goes over the collar and all the way down to this pocket here. And yeah, there's not much else to this shirt. If I flip it over to the back, you can see it's the same kind of thing. I do keep these parts of the shirt unbuttoned like he has them in the movie, so if you're going to do a costume, just make sure to do that. You can see a bit of where the blood soaked through because I've got to put a cardboard sheet in all of this shirt. I don't really mind the blood on the back. I think it makes it look kind of good, but it isn't movie accurate, so if you do want only blood on one side, put cardboard in the middle of the shirt before you do any painting. I've brought in my Part 6 shirt for a real quick comparison. As you can see, the fabric is a bit darker than it is here, but I overall went a lot lighter with the spray paint on this one than I did with this one, because as I said, in this movie he's running around in the rain a lot, so that will greatly affect how dark his clothes end up being. On this one, he's been buried under the ground for, I think, about 10 years, which is why I made the spray paint on here a lot more dirt-like than full water-like. That is also why the blood on here looks a lot less kind of like flowy, I guess, than it does on this part. And I do think it makes kind of like a nice contrast between the two shirts. As a side note, the kind of shirt and spray paint you use will greatly affect how this looks. This fabric is a lot more different than this one, and the way it holds spray paint, I'm very lucky with it, actually makes it look a lot more like water, and this one had it look a lot more like dirt. And I used a spray paint that had a bit more of a gloss for this one, which also helped with the kind of watery running in the rain look. Now, there is one slight inaccuracy about this shirt, and that's the fact that it only has one pocket as opposed to two, like my Part 6 one did. But this is the best one I could find at Goodwill, and they usually will have a section of kind of the green-colored shirts. They're just great for Jason costumes. Now, before I bring in the pants, I am going to really quickly show you this white shirt that I have. This isn't needed for the costume, but it does add a fair bit to it, because in the movie and Part 3, Jason just has this white undershirt throughout the whole thing. Now, it doesn't really matter what the shirt is, as long as this area of the collar is visible. This is just a random hand-me-down shirt I had for a while that I had no use for, so I put it to work on this costume, and I think it worked really well. One thing you do need to do, though, is tuck in the shirt so it doesn't hang out. Moving on to the pants, you can see that they are just as dirty as the shirt. I did try to start with the same effect where I hit it with the spray bottle, but no matter how many times I hit these pants, it would just kind of soak in and not end up showing the black that I added to the water. So this one I ended up just going over with a few bit more times with spray paint, and I think they turned out just fine. There isn't as many things with them as the shirt, so there aren't as many unpainted parts as there are on the shirt, which I like. Over on the leg, you have the knife wound from part 3, which I did end up tearing as I was stepping into it. This used to be a straight across line, so just be careful of that. I cut this and then went over it with some sandpaper just to fray out the edges a bit, and then I went over it with some very watered down dark red paint as opposed to the shirt. It was weird because this one didn't accept just like the black watered down water to make it darker, but it worked a lot better with the very watered down dark red paint, and that made it drip really nicely all the way down to the kind of the leg of the pants, and that did end up working really well for this knee stab. Other than that though, there is not a whole lot else to these pants. They're just a pair of pants that I made look really dirty and just added a cut into. If I bring them around to the back, you can see it is just the same kind of story all around here. There's some more bleed through because I forgot to put cardboard on there as well. I did the shirt and the pants at the same time. One thing I did do to the pants though is make the cuffs very dirty, like noticeably more dirty than the rest, just like they are in the movie, because they've been dragging around mud for kind of the whole night of part 3 and part 4. Now, I am very lucky that these pants ended up almost being the exact color I needed, which is kind of this off tan with just, I don't know, like a bit of gray in it, which was just the perfect color for this costume that I found at Goodwill, so I'm very happy for that. Again, comparing it to last year's pants, I do think these ones work a bit better. These ones might have been just a bit too light, but this one also looks a lot more dirt-like and less water-like it does on here. The one thing looking back on these pants is I think I could have frayed these a bit more, made them look a bit less square on the tatters. But other than that, I do still like the way last year's pants turned out, but I do think this pair looks a lot better, especially with the costume. I did also get a noticeably darker pair for the part 4 costume than I did for the part 6. This one should have been maybe a bit darker, but for part 4 you definitely want a darker pair of tan pants as opposed to a lighter one. Now, before I move on to the hood and mask, I am going to cover the 2 weapons I kind of use interchangeably with this costume. First is this meat cleaver I got back when King Soopers still sold Halloween costumes and weapons at their store, which is 5 years ago. If I can find it or something similar, I'll link it in the description, just because of how good it looks comparatively to the part 4 costume. And then second is this machete that I still had from last year's costume, from the Party City, which I spray painted chrome, just to make it a lot more kind of a dull metal than how shiny the chrome was. And these both work just very well with the costume, so either or will do really well. Moving on, you have the hood and mask. I'm going to start here with the hood. I ordered this bald old man mask off Amazon for about 20 bucks. As you can see, I did have to cut out the face just to make it a fair bit more comfortable to wear. But for the blood detailing, I took some hot glue and I made just this gash here and filled it in with black. I didn't do as intricate blood detailing on the mask as I did on my the actual part 4 hockey mask. I just used a couple different shades of red and painted it like it was dripping down. I did splatter some, as you can see, just to get that kind of effect all over this thing, but a main amount of this is blood strokes just for this. Now, you can really paint the blood any way you want. I really like the look of it just going everywhere, all the way kind of down to that neck right here. I have some on this eyebrow part, which shows through the mask, and looks really good with it, as you'll be able to see once I put the full thing on at the end of the video. And yeah, around the other side, there's nothing much special, and you've got this cut down the back of the mask. One thing is it smells really bad, so if anyone knows how to get kind of the chemical smell out of a mask, I'd do that. And this ear, most people will glue down this ear on a Jason thing to make it stick out, but no matter how hard I tried, I could not get any hot glue to keep something down on this mask. That's why only this kind of fit, but it would not hold anything kind of down in one position on this mask. So that kind of sucks. One thing with this hood is if you have a bit longer hair like I do, you are going to want to wear a balaclava underneath it just because of how much this thing will grab onto your hair. But other than that, I do really like how this thing looks, and for $20, this is a very good Jason hood. Last but not least is the hockey mask I made for this out of a Spirit Halloween mask. I do still really love the look of this with the gray. I think I got just the right shade of yellow on it. I think I got the straps pretty much perfect. I love the way I did the blood detailing around the mask. And if you put on the hood, or at least put it over the hood, you can see that like that lines up with the gash. And I did that just by putting on the mask and then putting on the hood and then drawing a line here and kind of just going off of that on the hood. And yeah, as I said, I already do have a video showing off how to make this and showing off this whole thing in detail. But this was a Spirit Halloween mask, which I modified into this. Comparing this to last year's hooded mask, you can definitely just see the difference. I still really do think this mask works really good as a part 6, just the way I cut it. I did end up adding some blood detailing and try to add some dirt later on, which worked to, I don't know, a varying effect. But as you can see, these hoods are just completely different. I am surprised that this hood has held up over the past year for just being in a box with all this hot glue and paint on it. And I don't think it's a bad hood by any means, but this one just does look a lot more movie accurate. This one is also very small, which just kind of fit me a bit better because I am skinny. But for Jason, it just depending on who you are, it might not work as well. One more thing I really do like about this hood is that it has this kind of neck section that you tuck into your shirt, which makes your shoulders really broad and just is a lot more convincing than having like a balaclava that would end about there. And I just love how it looked at the costume, and we'll see how well it works a bit later on. For the boots, my family just had this old pair of work boots that work pretty well for all the Jason costumes I use. I used them last year, they're in my size, and yeah, they work pretty well. Nothing too special, I didn't have to buy them, and yeah.